The colony of New Bristol sat on a green and blue world far from Earth. It was a small place, home to about 3,000 people who had come to build new lives among the stars. The planet was called Kepler 442b in the old star charts, but the people who lived there simply called it home. Pete Lawson had brought his family here 5 years ago. He worked as an engineer, fixing the machines that kept the colony running. His wife Maria taught at the small school. Their daughter Emma was 8 years old, with brown hair and curious eyes that always seemed to be asking questions. Their son Danny was 6, a quiet boy who followed his sister everywhere and believed every story she told him. On this particular evening, the whole colony had gathered in the central square for the Harvest Festival. Lanterns hung from poles and children ran between the legs of adults. Music played from old speakers, and the smell of cooking food filled the air. It was a night for celebration, for forgetting how far they were from Earth. Pete stood near the food tables, watching his children play with their friends. Maria was helping serve dinner to the elderly folks who could not stand in line. Everything felt peaceful. Everything felt safe. Then the sky changed. A shadow fell over the square, blocking out the stars. People looked up and saw a ship unlike anything humans had ever built. It was massive, dark, and covered in strange patterns that seemed to move on their own. The music stopped. The laughter died. The ship descended slowly, almost lazily, as if it had all the time in the world. When it touched down in the fields beyond the square, the ground shook. Then hatches opened along its sides, and figures began to pour out. They were tall, almost 7 feet, with scaled skin that shifted between green and gray. Their eyes were yellow with black slits, and they moved with a terrible grace. They carried weapons that glowed with blue light. Nobody in the colony had ever seen a Veltri before, but everyone knew the stories. Slavers, raiders, monsters, who took people and sold them across the galaxy. Pete grabbed Maria's arm. "Get to the shelter," he said. "Take the kids and run." But the Veltri were fast. Too fast. They spread through the square like water through cracks, cutting off escape routes and herding people into groups. Some colonists tried to fight. A man named Greg Patterson swung a metal pole at one of the aliens. The Veltri did not even slow down. A flash of blue light, and Greg fell and did not move again. Pete pushed through the crowd, searching for his children. He could hear Emma screaming his name somewhere ahead. He could hear Danny crying. He ran faster than he had ever run in his life. He found them near the fountain in the center of the square. A Veltri soldier had Emma by the arm, lifting her off the ground. Another was reaching for Danny. Pete did not think. He threw himself at the alien holding his daughter, hitting it with all his weight. The Veltri stumbled, but did not fall. It turned and looked at Pete with those yellow eyes, and for a moment, there was something like curiosity in its gaze. Then it struck him across the face with the back of its hand. Pete flew backward and hit the ground hard. Blood filled his mouth. Stars danced in his vision. He tried to get up. He tried to crawl toward his children, but his body would not obey. He could only watch as the soldiers dragged Emma and Danny toward the ship. He could only listen as his daughter called out for him, her voice growing fainter with distance. "Daddy! Daddy, please!" Other children were being taken too. Pete could see them being carried or dragged, their small forms struggling against the grip of the aliens. Parents fought and screamed and begged, but it made no difference. The Veltri moved with cold efficiency, as if they had done this 1,000 times before, because they had. Across the galaxy, the Veltri Dominion was known for this. They raided weaker species, took their young, and sold them in markets on distant worlds. It was their economy. It was their way of life. They had been doing it for centuries, and no one had ever stopped them. The loading took less than 20 minutes. 37 children in total, ranging from 4 years old to 12. The Valkyrie did not take adults. Adults were troublesome, they said. Children could be trained. Children could be broken. When the last child was aboard, the hatches closed. The ship rose into the sky, its engines making a sound like thunder. Pete lay on the ground and watched it disappear into the darkness between the stars. Carrying everything he loved, Maria found him there, bleeding and broken. She fell to her knees beside him, and they held each other as the night grew cold around them. Other parents gathered too, their faces empty, their eyes filled with a grief too deep for tears. Someone eventually helped Pete to his feet. Someone else brought him to the communication center. His hands were shaking as he sat down at the console, but his voice was steady when he began to record his message. He told Earth what had happened. He described the ship, the aliens, the children who had been taken. He listed every name, every age, every face. He asked for help. He begged for help. And then he sent the message out into the void, hoping someone would hear. The message reached Earth in 3 days. It was picked up by a relay station near Mars and forwarded to the United Terran Council. Within hours, it was playing on every screen on the planet. Parents watched with horror as they listened to Pete's broken voice. They looked at their own children and imagined losing them to the darkness. Something changed in humanity that day. Something old and fierce, buried deep in their genes since the days when they huddled in caves and protected their young from predators. It was a feeling beyond anger, beyond rage. It was a promise, written in the blood of every mother and father who had ever lived. The Valkyrie Dominion had taken human children. They thought humanity was weak. They thought humans would beg and bargain, and eventually accept their loss. They did not know what they had awakened across the stars. On 100 colonies and a dozen space stations, humans stopped what they were doing and looked toward Earth. They waited for the response they knew was coming. They waited for the signal that would tell them what to do next and in the halls of power on Earth. Admiral Grace Holloway listened to Pete Lawson's message and made a decision that would change the galaxy forever. The hunt was about to begin. Admiral Grace Holloway had served in the military for 23 years. She had fought pirates near Jupiter, defended mining stations from corporate raiders, and built the first true interstellar battle fleet humanity had ever possessed. She was 61 years old, with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen too much death. When Pete Lawson's message played in the council chamber, she did not move. She sat perfectly still and listened to every word. She heard the fear in his voice. She heard the desperation. She heard a father who had watched his children disappear into the stars. The room was silent when the message ended. 20 council members sat around the curved table, representing every major nation and colony in human space. Some of them looked sick. Others looked angry. A few were crying. Grace stood up slowly. "I need authorization," she said. Her voice was calm, almost soft. "Full military authorization. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier we have." Council Chairman Victor Reyes leaned forward. He was a careful man, a politician who had spent his career avoiding conflict. "Admiral, we need to consider our options. The Valkyrie Dominion is powerful. Perhaps we should open diplomatic channels first. Perhaps we could negotiate for the return of no." The word hung in the air. Grace looked at the chairman with those tired, knowing eyes. "With respect, sir, there will be no negotiation. There will be no diplomacy. Those are children. Human children. Our children." She paused and let the words sink in. "I did not build this fleet to watch it sit in orbit while our people are sold like animals. If you want someone to negotiate, find another admiral. If you want those children back, give me your authorization." The vote was called. It was unanimous. Within hours, orders went out to every corner of human space. Ships that had been patrolling trade routes changed course. Vessels that had been undergoing repairs were rushed back into service. Soldiers who had been on leave were recalled to duty. The largest military mobilization in human history began, and it happened in near silence. The Galactic Assembly noticed. They could hardly miss 12 carrier groups converging on one location, their engines burning bright against the stars. Ambassador ZethKO of the Mavani Collective was the first to reach out. The Marvani were an old species, wise and cautious. They had seen empires rise and fall across thousands of years. ZethKO's face appeared on the communication screen in Grace's command center. He looked worried, his pale blue skin rippling with concern. "Admiral Holloway," he said, "I must urge you to reconsider this course of action. The Velthari Dominion controls over 10,000 warships. They have conquered 17 species. Their military power is beyond anything humanity has ever faced." Grace poured herself a cup of coffee while he spoke. She took a slow sip before responding. "I appreciate your concern, Ambassador, but this is not a decision. This is a response." "You will be destroyed," ZethKO said, his voice rising. "Your species has only possessed faster than light travel for 60 years. The Velthari have been a power in this galaxy for millennia. Please accept my offer to mediate. We can negotiate a ransom. The children can be returned without bloodshed." "The children will be returned," Grace agreed. "But there will be bloodshed, Ambassador. Quite a lot of it, I expect. Just not ours." ZethKO stared at her through the screen. "You cannot possibly believe you can defeat them." Grace set down her coffee cup. For the first time, something like emotion flickered across her face. It was not anger. It was something older, something deeper. "Let me explain something to you, Ambassador. Something your species may have forgotten, if you ever knew it at all. Humans do not start wars for resources. We do not start wars for territory. We do not start wars for pride or honor or any of the reasons your histories describe. We start wars when someone threatens our families, when someone takes our children." She leaned closer to the screen. "The Velthari made a mistake. They thought we were like the other species they have raided. Weak, scattered, willing to accept loss to avoid conflict. They were wrong. Every human who can hold a weapon is ready to die for those 37 children. Every human ship is ready to burn for them. We will not stop. We will not negotiate. We will not rest until every single child is home safe." ZethKO was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was quiet. "Then I will pray for you, Admiral. And for the Velthari. I do not know which of you needs it more." The transmission ended. Grace turned to her command staff. They were young, most of them officers who had trained for a war they hoped would never come. Now it was here, and she could see the fear in their eyes. But she could see something else too: determination, fury, the same fire that burned in her own heart. "Send word to all fleet commanders," she said. "We move in 6 hours. Formation Delta. Combat protocols in effect." A young lieutenant named Beth Morris looked up from her console. "Admiral, should we broadcast a message to the Dominion? Give them a chance to surrender the children peacefully?" Grace considered the question. She thought about Emma and Danny Lawson, scared and alone on an alien ship. She thought about their father, waiting on a distant colony, hoping against hope. "No," she said finally. "They will know we are coming soon enough. And when they see what we bring with us, they will understand that we are not asking." The fleet assembled in formation. Carriers the size of small cities. Destroyers bristling with weapons. Cruisers designed to break through any defense. And at the center of it all, the command ship Endurance, where Grace Holloway stood on the bridge and watched the stars. She had a small picture in her pocket. It was old and worn, a photograph of a little girl with brown hair and curious eyes. Her daughter, lost to illness 15 years ago. Grace had never forgotten that pain. She had never stopped wishing she could have done more, fought harder, saved her. Now she had a chance to save someone else's children. She would not fail again. The fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed, and the stars stretched into lines of light. Behind them, Earth grew smaller and smaller until it was just another point of light in the darkness. Ahead of them, the Veltari Dominion waited. They did not know what was coming. They did not understand what they had done by taking those children. They would learn. The whole galaxy would learn. Humanity was coming for its children, and nothing in the universe would stand in their way. Captain Marcus Cole stood on the bridge of the Endurance and watched the border of Veltari space approach. He was 44 years old, a career Navy man with a quiet voice and steady hands. 5 years ago, he had buried his daughter after a long illness. He still carried her picture in his wallet. He understood what those parents on New Bristol were feeling, and that understanding had turned into something hard and cold inside his chest. The fleet dropped out of faster-than-light speed at the edge of Dominion territory. 347 human ships arranged in perfect formation. It was the largest human fleet ever assembled, carrying 60,000 soldiers and enough firepower to crack a moon. They did not have to wait long for a response. Veltari ships began appearing on the sensors within minutes. First a dozen, then 50, then hundreds. They poured out of nearby stations and patrol routes, forming a wall of metal between the human fleet and the worlds beyond. 300 warships in total, each one bristling with weapons. Marcus studied the enemy formation on the tactical display. The Veltari ships were larger than most human vessels, built for intimidation as much as combat. Their hulls were covered with those strange moving patterns, and their weapons glowed with the same blue light that had killed colonists on New Bristol. "They're hailing us," said Communications Officer Jenny Walsh, a young woman with red hair and freckles. Her voice was calm, but Marcus could see her hands trembling slightly over her console. "Put them through." The main screen flickered, and a Veltari face appeared. It belonged to Overlord HFY, commander of this sector's defense fleet. His scales were dark green, almost black, and his yellow eyes held nothing but contempt. "Human vessels," HFY said, his voice translated by the ship's computer into flat, emotionless words. "You have entered Dominion space without authorization. This is an act of war. Turn back now, or you will be destroyed." Marcus clasped his hands behind his back. He took a moment to look at the faces of his crew, these young men and women who had volunteered to follow him into the unknown. Then he turned back to the screen. "Overlord, my name is Captain Marcus Cole. I command this fleet. We are not here for war in the way you understand it. We are here for our children." HFY made a sound that might have been laughter. "The specimens taken from your colony are now property of the Dominion. They will be processed and sold according to our customs. This is not negotiable. If you wish to purchase them back, you may submit a bid through proper channels." "You misunderstand me," Marcus said. His voice remained soft, almost gentle. "I am not here to negotiate. I am not here to purchase. I am here to take our children back, and I will destroy anything that stands between us and them." The Veltari Overlord leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "You command 300 ships. I command 300 ships. Your species has never fought a real war. My species has conquered half this sector of the galaxy. Do you truly believe you can defeat us?" Marcus smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. "I believe that in about 10 minutes. We will find out." He nodded to Jenny, and she cut the transmission. "All ships," Marcus said into the fleet-wide channel. "The Veltari have refused to return our children. They have chosen war. Let us show them what that means. The battle began. Human ships moved first, spreading into attack formations that the Velthari had never seen before. They did not charge head-on like most species did. They did not try to match the Dominion ship for ship. Instead, they flowed like water, surrounding the enemy fleet and striking from multiple angles at once. The first Velthari ship died before it could fire a single shot. A human destroyer named the Relentless opened up with its railguns, launching tungsten slugs at a fraction of the speed of light. The slugs punched through Velthari shields like they were not there, tearing holes through the hull and out the other side. HFY barked orders, trying to reorganize his fleet. But the humans were too fast, too coordinated. More railgun rounds slammed into Velthari ships, and more ships died. Then, missiles came. Human missiles were different from anything the galaxy had seen before. They did not simply fly in a straight line toward their target. They thought. They adapted. They worked together like wolves hunting prey. When the Velthari point defense systems tried to shoot them down, the missiles dodged and weaved and came at them from new angles. Ships began exploding across the Velthari formation. The blue glow of their weapons flickered and died as power systems failed. Escape pods launched from crippled vessels, their crews desperate to flee the destruction. On the bridge of the Endurance, Marcus watched the battle unfold. His face showed no joy, no satisfaction. He felt only a grim determination to see this through. "Focus fire on their command ship," he ordered. "End this quickly." 12 human destroyers converged on HFY's flagship. The Velthari overlord tried to retreat, but there was nowhere to go. Railgun rounds tore through his ship's engines. Missiles blasted holes in the hull. In the end, the mighty warship broke apart like a toy, spilling debris and bodies into the void. The battle lasted 9 minutes. When it was over, 271 Velthari ships drifted in silence. Some were completely destroyed. Others were crippled, leaking atmosphere and fuel into space. The remaining ships had fled, jumping to faster than light speed and running, as fast as their engines could carry them. The human fleet had lost 4 ships. 1,200 sailors, gone in the flash of enemy weapons. Their names would be remembered. Their sacrifice would be honored. But for now, there was work to do. Marcus opened a channel to the entire Dominion. He knew they were listening. Everyone was listening. This message is for the Velthari Dominion and anyone else who might be watching. My name is Captain Marcus Cole of the Human Fleet. What you just witnessed was not a battle. It was a warning. He paused, letting the weight of those words sink in. We came here for our children. We will not stop until we have them back. The next fleet you send against us will not receive a warning. It will receive only fire. If you value the lives of your soldiers, if you value your empire, you will return our children immediately. If you do not, we will come to your homeworld, and we will take them ourselves. He ended the transmission across the galaxy. In council chambers and war rooms and homes, beings of 100 different species watched the recordings of the battle. They saw the speed and precision of human weapons. They saw the wreckage of the Velthari fleet. They saw a species that had been dismissed as young and weak demonstrate a capacity for violence that none of them had expected. The Morvani ambassador sat in his office and stared at the screen. He thought about what Admiral Holloway had said to him. He thought about the fury he had seen in her eyes. Now he understood. Now they all understood. The humans were not coming to negotiate. They were not coming to talk. They were coming for their children, and they would burn the galaxy to ash before they stopped. The warning had been delivered. The question now was whether anyone would be wise enough to listen. The human fleet pushed deeper into Velthari space, moving like a knife through soft flesh. Every station they passed went silent. Every patrol they encountered either fled or died. Word had spread through the Dominion about what had happened at the border. And no one wanted to be the next to face human weapons. Lieutenant Amy Grant worked in the intelligence section of the Endurance, a small room filled with screens and computers and the constant hum of data being processed. She was 32 years old, with dark skin and tired eyes that had not seen proper sleep in days. Her job was to listen to Velthury communications, to piece together enemy movements, to find out where the children had been taken. She was good at her job. Very good. On the third day of the invasion, she found what she was looking for. "Captain Cole," she said, her voice barely containing her excitement. "I've located them. The children. They're being held on a processing station on the fourth moon of Velthur Prime." Marcus was at her station within seconds. "Show me." Amy pulled up the data on her screen. The processing station was a large facility built into the rocky surface of the moon. It was where the Velthury brought captured slaves before selling them at auction. According to the communications Amy had intercepted, the human children were scheduled to be sold in 3 days. 3 days, Marcus said quietly. He studied the tactical data, calculating distances and speeds. "We can't reach Velthur Prime in time. Their home defense grid is too strong. We'd have to fight through 6 more fleets to get there." "There might be another way," Amy said. She brought up a different set of data. "We captured a Velthury transport after the border battle. Small ship, fast, equipped with the right codes to pass through their security checkpoints. If we could get a team onto that transport..." Marcus understood immediately. "An infiltration. Get inside the station, extract the children, and hold position until the fleet arrives." "Yes, sir. But it would have to be a small team. The transport can only hold about 200 people. And they'd be behind enemy lines, surrounded by hostiles, with no backup until we break through." Marcus looked at the image of the processing station for a long moment. He thought about those children, scared and alone, waiting to be sold to strangers. He thought about their parents back on New Bristol, hoping and praying for a miracle. "Call for volunteers," he said. "Marines only. Make sure they understand what they're signing up for." Amy nodded. "Yes, sir." The call went out that evening. Within an hour, over 1,000 Marines had volunteered. They had to turn most of them away. Only 200 could fit on the transport. Sergeant Kevin Briggs was chosen to lead the team. He was 36 years old, a quiet man from Montana who had joined the military to pay for college. He had never expected to see real combat, let alone lead a suicide mission into the heart of an alien empire. But when he heard about the children, something clicked inside him. He had a niece back on Earth, about the same age as some of those kids. He could not sit by and do nothing. Kevin gathered his team in the cargo bay of the Endurance. 200 Marines, men and women from every corner of human space. They were young, most of them. They were scared, though they tried not to show it. They knew the odds. "Listen up," Kevin said. His voice was steady, his eyes moving from face to face. "In 6 hours, we're going to board that Velthury transport and fly straight into enemy territory. We're going to land on that moon, fight our way into that station, and get those kids out. Then we're going to hold our position until the fleet arrives to pick us up." He paused. "Some of us won't make it. Maybe most of us won't make it. But those children are counting on us. Their parents are counting on us. Every human being who ever lived is counting on us. We do not fail. We do not surrender. We bring our kids home." The Marines responded with a roar of approval. 6 hours later, the transport slipped away from the fleet and jumped to faster than light speed. It passed through 3 Velthury checkpoints without incident, the captured codes working perfectly. Kevin watched through the small viewport as enemy ships passed by, oblivious to the danger in their midst. On the moon's surface, in the depths of the processing station, the children waited in a cold, gray cell. They had been given water but little food. They had been examined by Velthary doctors who poked and prodded them like animals. Some of the younger ones cried constantly. The older ones tried to stay strong, tried to comfort the little ones. But the fear was eating at all of them. Emma Lawson sat in the corner with her brother Danny in her arms. She had not slept in days. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her father's face as the aliens dragged her away. She heard her mother screaming. She felt the cold grip of scaled hands on her skin. Danny looked up at her with red-rimmed eyes. "Emma, are we going to die?" She wanted to say no. She wanted to promise him that everything would be okay. But the words would not come. She had never lied to her brother, and she would not start now. "I don't know," she whispered, "but I won't let them hurt you. No matter what happens, I'll protect you." Danny nodded and buried his face in her shoulder. Emma stroked his hair and stared at the cell door. She had heard stories about humans, back before all this happened. Stories about how brave they were, how they never gave up, how they always came to save people in trouble. She had believed those stories once. Now, she was not sure what to believe. The transport entered the moon's atmosphere under cover of a massive solar flare. The radiation scrambled Velthary sensors just long enough for the ship to land undetected near the station's outer perimeter. The Marines poured out of the transport and moved through the rocky terrain like shadows, their weapons ready, their hearts pounding. Kevin led the way. He had memorized the station's layout from intelligence reports, every corridor and every room. He knew where the guards would be positioned. He knew where the children were being held. He knew the fastest route to get there. The first Velthary guards they encountered died before they could raise an alarm. Human rifles were quiet, efficient, deadly. The Marines moved through the outer sections of the station like ghosts, leaving a trail of bodies behind them. Then someone saw them. An alarm began to wail. Red lights flashed in every corridor. Velthary soldiers poured out of barracks and armories, their weapons glowing blue. The quiet infiltration became a firefight. Kevin pushed his team forward, taking cover behind crates and bulkheads, returning fire with precision. Marines fell around him, cut down by alien weapons, but the survivors kept moving. They could not stop. They could not hesitate. The children were waiting. They reached the holding area after 20 minutes of brutal combat. Kevin kicked open the door to the cell block and saw them, 37 small faces looking up at him with a mixture of terror and hope. Emma Lawson stared at the human soldiers in disbelief. They wore armor covered in dust and blood. They carried weapons that still smoked from recent fire. They looked exhausted, beaten, barely standing, but they were here. They had come. Kevin knelt down in front of her. He tried to smile, though it came out crooked and tired. "Hey, kids," he said. "We're here to take you home." Danny pulled away from Emma's arms and looked at Kevin with wide eyes. "Are you heroes? Like in the stories?" Kevin glanced back at his Marines, at the men and women who had followed him into hell without hesitation. Some of them were wounded. Some of them were dying. All of them had come anyway. "No," he said softly. "We're just Marines." Then the next wave of Velthary soldiers arrived, and the fight for survival began. The Marines formed a defensive circle around the children, their backs to the walls, their weapons pointing outward at every entrance. Kevin Briggs had counted his people after the initial push. Of the 200 who had landed, 162 were still standing. The rest were dead or too wounded to fight. Velthary soldiers came in waves, pouring through the corridors with their blue weapons blazing. The station's narrow passages worked in the Marines' favor, forcing the aliens to attack in small groups that could be cut down before they reached the defensive line. But the ammunition was running low, and reinforcements kept coming. Kevin crouched behind an overturned metal table, firing short bursts at shapes moving in the smoke. Next to him, A young Marine named Lisa Park was bandaging a wound on her arm with one hand while shooting with the other. Her face was pale, but her eyes were steady. "Sergeant," she said between shots, "how long until the fleet gets here?" Kevin checked his tactical display. The answer made his stomach twist. 4 hours. Maybe 5. Lisa nodded slowly. She did not ask if they could hold that long. They both knew the answer. Behind them, the children huddled in the center of the room. Some were crying. Others sat in shocked silence, watching the violence around them with blank eyes. Emma Lawson had gathered the youngest ones close to her, shielding them with her body, whispering words of comfort she did not believe. Danny tugged at her sleeve. "Emma, are we going to be okay?" Before she could answer, Kevin appeared beside them. His armor was scorched and dented, and blood trickled from a cut on his forehead. But his voice was calm when he spoke. "We're going to be fine," he said, looking at Danny with kind eyes. "My friends are coming with big ships and lots of guns. We just have to wait a little while." Danny stared at him. "Promise?" Kevin hesitated for just a moment. Then he nodded. "Promise." The hours crawled by. The Marines held their position, trading fire with an enemy that seemed endless. Bodies piled up in the corridors, both alien and human. The air grew thick with smoke and the smell of burning metal. Every minute felt like an eternity. Kevin lost track of how many times he had to reload, how many enemies he had killed, how many friends he had watched fall. His arms ached. His legs burned. But every time he thought about giving up, he looked at the children behind him and found new strength. Then the ground shook. It was not an explosion inside the station. It was something larger, something coming from above. Kevin looked up at the ceiling, and despite everything, he smiled. In orbit above the moon, the human fleet had arrived. Admiral Grace Holloway stood on the bridge of the Endurance and watched the Valkyrie Home Defense Force scramble to meet them. 6,000 warships, the largest fleet the Dominion had ever assembled, spread across the space between the fleet and the planet below. It was an impressive sight, a wall of metal and firepower that should have made any attacker think twice. Grace did not hesitate. "All ships," she said, "execute Operation Homecoming." The human fleet surged forward. But this time, they were not fighting with just railguns and missiles. This time, they had brought weapons that humanity had kept hidden, systems designed for the worst-case scenario, devices that had never been used in combat before, planet crackers, reality anchors, things with no official names, built in secret facilities by engineers who hoped they would never be needed. The first planet cracker round struck a Valkyrie dreadnought and passed straight through its shields, its armor, and out the other side before detonating in a sphere of pure destruction. Everything within 100 kilometers simply ceased to exist. Ships, debris, even the light itself seemed to bend and twist around the point of impact. The Valkyrie fleet recoiled in shock. They had never seen anything like this. They had never imagined anything like this. More planet crackers fired. More ships died. The Valkyrie formation began to break apart as captains chose survival over duty. Some tried to flee. Some tried to surrender. It did not matter. The human fleet pushed through them like a hammer through glass. Unstoppable, relentless, furious. On the moon below, Kevin heard the news through his communicator. The fleet was in orbit. Shuttles were launching. Rescue was coming. "Hold on," he shouted to his remaining Marines. "Just a few more minutes." "Hold on." The Valkyrie inside the station heard the news too. They knew what was happening above them. They knew their empire was falling. Some of them tried one last desperate assault, throwing everything they had at the human position. The Marines met them with everything they had left. It was brutal, close-quarters combat, rifle butts and knives and bare hands. Kevin found himself wrestling with a Velthari soldier twice his size, struggling to keep those clawed hands away from his throat. Lisa Park appeared behind the alien and shot it in the back of the head. "Thanks," Kevin gasped. "Any time, Sergeant." Then the ceiling exploded, not from an enemy attack but from rescue. Human shuttles burned through the station's outer hull and landed in the middle of the holding area. Their doors already opening, their crews already rushing out with weapons ready. "Get the children on board," Kevin ordered. "Move, move, move." Marines lifted kids into their arms and ran for the shuttles. Emma grabbed Danny and stumbled toward the nearest door, her legs barely working after so long without food or sleep. A soldier took Danny from her arms and carried him inside. Another helped her climb up the ramp. Kevin was the last aboard. He stood at the shuttle door, firing at pursuing Velthari until the ramp began to close. Then he collapsed into a seat, his whole body shaking with exhaustion. The shuttle lifted off and climbed toward the stars. Below them, the processing station burned. Above them, the wreckage of the Velthari home fleet drifted in silence. And beyond that, the human fleet maintained its position, a wall of protection that no enemy would dare challenge. Of the 200 Marines who had volunteered for the mission, 131 made it back to the fleet. The rest had given their lives for 37 children they had never met. Their names would be carved into monuments. Their stories would be told for generations. The Velthari Dominions surrendered 3 days later. Their leadership was arrested and tried for crimes against sentient beings. The slave markets were shut down. 17 species that had lived in chains for centuries walked free for the first time in their lives. In the aftermath, the Galactic Assembly summoned humanity to explain its actions. Representatives from 400 species gathered in the Great Council Chamber, waiting to hear from these strange, violent, terrifying creatures who had destroyed one of the galaxy's great powers in a matter of weeks. Ambassador Catherine Moore walked to the speaking platform. She was a small woman in her 60s, with gray hair and gentle eyes. She looked nothing like a warrior, nothing like a conqueror. She looked like someone's grandmother. She spoke for only a few minutes. She explained that humanity had not come to the stars looking for enemies. They had come hoping to find friends, hoping to learn, hoping to share in the wonders of the universe. But she also made something very clear. "Our children are not cargo," she said, her voice soft but carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. "Our children are not property. They are the reason we built ships in the first place. They are the reason we reached for the stars. Everything we do, everything we are, exists to give them a better future." She paused and looked around at the assembled representatives. "If you treat humanity with kindness and respect, you will find no better friends anywhere in this galaxy. We will share our knowledge, our technology, our culture. We will stand beside you in times of trouble and celebrate with you in times of joy." Her eyes hardened, just slightly. "But if you harm our children, if you take them, if you even think about treating them as anything less than precious, you will find no worse enemy. We will come for them. We will not stop. We will not rest. We will tear down empires and burn worlds to ash. There is no force in this universe that will stand between us and our young." She stepped back from the platform. "We hope this makes our position clear." The chamber was silent. 3 weeks later, Pete Lawson stood in the spaceport of New Bristol, watching a shuttle descend from the sky. His heart was pounding so hard he could barely breathe. Maria stood beside him, clutching his hand with both of hers. The shuttle landed. The door opened. Emma came down the ramp first, holding Danny's hand. They were thin and pale, with shadows under their eyes that would take months to fade. But they were alive. They were home. Pete fell to his knees and opened his arms. His children ran to him, and for a long time, the three of them simply held each other and wept. Maria joined them, wrapping her arms around all of them, crying and laughing at the same time. Around them, other families were reuniting, other parents holding children they had feared they would never see again. Above them, human ships maintained their watch over the colony. They were not looking for trouble, but they were ready for it, now and forever. Some species conquered through force, some through trade, some through cultural influence. Humanity spread through the stars with a simpler message, written in the actions of soldiers and the tears of parents and the unbreakable bonds between generations. No child left behind. Not now, not ever. This was humanity's promise to the universe, and they would keep it until the stars themselves grew cold.